Friday afternoon to you, 4 o'clock, time for Sports4CLE. Thanks for joining us. Hope your weekend is off to a great start. Well, Browns gave Cleveland a little bit of an early weekend start with that Thursday night win in the snow at home against the Steelers. Browns found a way to get their third win and gave the Steelers, who came in 8-2, their third loss. Far from perfect, but you take the results when you get a win. Kevin Stefanski in the locker room addressing the Browns after the win.
How about that team win? Yeah! D. Bush called me. Hey, we talked about being resilient. Resilient doesn't give a fuck. Resilient doesn't care, okay? Resilient just worries about what's in front of them, okay? How about what was in front of us? We're up 18-6. And then the fourth quarter, all of a sudden, we're down 19-8. And what do we need to be as a team? Resilient. And you only do that together. You only do that as an offense, as a defense, and as special teams. Okay, I told you to expect to win this game. I told you to have your conviction exceed your doubt. And what I saw from this group in that fourth quarter was our conviction was so strong, we were not leaving without this win. As a team, fellas, that is a great, great team win, and I appreciate this group. Team on three. 1, 2, 3.
With that, let's welcome in G. Bush, 92.3 The Fans, the Barbershop, as well as the Ultimate Cleveland Sports Show. And G. Bush, there is never such thing as bad win against the Pittsburgh Steelers for the Cleveland Browns.
Okay, Kevin Stefanski, you sounded like you was a man on a mission in there. Listen, that's not the cool, calm, collected, I'm the GQ model with the nice silvery beard. It looked like you was in there really expecting to win this football game. I like what you did in that post-game conference right there, is talking to your team, because one thing that we were looking forward to is saying, we're going to find out in these next few games what it is that Kevin Stefanski is really made of. It's easy to talk about winning games last year a little bit when you have 8, I don't know how many quarterbacks they were playing, but in a way, you weren't expected to win those games because Deshaun Watson was out for the year. You would take PJ Walker, DTR. It's all well documented. You're almost playing with house money then. This year, you had expectations. And when they turned out Deshaun Watson is gone again, it's a whole different another ball game now, because now we're trying to see whether or not your team is going to go to bat for you, whether your team is going to fight, whether your team is going to come out. They don't really have much to play for at 2-8. When you're 2-8 and you don't got much to play for, and you got a division rival coming into your backyard, and it's snowing outside and it's cold, and the first thing in your mind is, maybe I should go ahead and pack this in. Maybe I should go ahead and say my hamstring is a little tight. Maybe I don't really want to run and sprint down the field and tackle somebody in the snowstorm. But I will give you credit, and I'll give him all the credit in the world. His team didn't quit on him. His team actually did persevere through a lot of things. And there was times in that football game where we thought it was going to be the same old Browns, same old way to lose it, especially when they, as he talked about, you're up in the fourth quarter, 2 scores, all of a sudden you're down. You look it up like, what happened? This is one of those typical Browns being the Browns games, but they got it done. Jameis Winston, I'm sure we'll talk about him throughout this little segment. I thought the numbers ain't gonna really show it, but I thought he played tremendous. He had a turnover there, but some of the stuff he was doing in the snowstorm, he rallied his team. People believe in him, and it may sound a little funny, and you may look at Jameis a little bit the way he answers questions, but you can never doubt the man's faith and his ability to rally his team. So I thought overall great team win, especially when you're talking about doing it against the Steelers, who have been coming in on a roll. I'm all for taking it, getting the Steelers up out of here anytime I can. Great team win, great entertaining game, and Kevin Stefanski lives to fight another week.
Absolutely. So this is from the pregame show on Amazon Prime, TFN tonight. Albert Breer, national reporter, plugged in, goes all over the place. What he's hearing where the Browns are headed from here.
So, Albert, a lot of, Cleveland's struggles can be attributed to the quarterback position. Deshaun Watson, let's talk about him for a second, has 2 more fully guaranteed years on his contract. What do you expect to see over the course of the offseason with this organization in that position?
Well, for now, Deshaun Watson's focus is on his rehab. He had his surgery in Charlotte. Since then, he's been rehabbing both in Florida and in Ohio. The hope is, as his rehab progresses, he'll be spending more and more time in Cleveland. And like you said, the guaranteed money does complicate this. $92 million fully guaranteed over the next 2 years, $172.77 million in cap charges that the team has to reckon with. And he's probably not going to be healthy in the spring, so the overwhelming likelihood is that he will be on the roster in 2025. But the Browns' approach to filling that quarterback room will, in all likelihood, be different. I'm told that rather than looking to build him up with what's around him the way they have the last couple of years, that's one reason why Joe Flacco isn't there anymore. They're going to look to put competition in the quarterback room, either through the draft or free agency. And Carissa, one more thing. I know there's been a lot of speculation about job security in Cleveland. My understanding is that barring something catastrophic happening here over the next 2 months, the Browns' plan is to bring both Kevin Stefanski and Andrew Berry back in 2025.
A lot there, G. Bush. Relative to Deshaun Watson, I get it. You can't take the mammoth cap hit, but you can say, okay, it's an open competition and treat it as such, which it certainly wasn't. The other thing is if Stefanski and Berry are both back, it tells me that the Deshaun Watson decision was truly collaborative, and all of them are taking it. Nobody is taking the fall for that decision, and it might have been the owner's decision.
Yeah, it might have been just, we can't say it. I think I forget who told me this. Usually, generally speaking, when you talk about a quarterback decision, the owner's gonna make the last final decision on that. The amount of money that they make, it's the face of the franchise. It's the most important position. I think we would be foolhardy to believe that the owner does not have the final way in saying and say so on who's the quarterback is. So I agree. I think that goes to show you that probably everybody in the organization was down for the cause at that point, and it's just not working out at this point. I do think that there is a lot to be said about competition. I think that's an understatement. I think you can't go into next season, and I think Kevin Stefanski and Andrew Berry have learned one thing. They've learned that even if Deshaun Watson was playing top of the notch football, right? Say for instance he was doing his thing, and it was no question that he was the starting quarterback. Well, you got to look at it. He was suspended for 11 games. I know that's not out of his control, but he did sit out a year. That was under his control. For the prior year before he got here at Houston, he was suspended those 11 games. Then he played 6 games last year. And then this year he played a handful of games as well. So that means he has not played a full season in how long? One thing that you can say, either through injuries or through whatever the case may be, I don't think even if he was playing great football, I don't think you can look at that and say we can count on Deshaun Watson to be ready to play football and he's going to make it through the entire season. He's now had an ACL injury. He's had an Achilles heel injury. He's had the shoulder surgery. He had an ACL back in Clemson. So think about the level of injuries that he's had so far. And even if that was, even if it was playing good football, I don't think you could just count on him going into next season as a quarterback. And complicating things is the fact that Jameis Winston, by the way, has thrown the ball for 300 yards against the Ravens, 400 yards almost last week against the Saints, gets a big-time win against the Steelers. It's an understatement of the year to say that Deshaun Watson is going to be in a competition. He's at the bottom looking up at the guys at the top. He's going to have to overperform if he wants to come back and play football, period.
Yeah, I would agree. And you touched on it. An Achilles injury, a shoulder injury, an ACL injury, he's not going to be the same athletic guy that he was. Father, as LeBron James has said, Father Time is undefeated. And when you get injured, it takes longer the older you get to come back. This is interesting as well. And, I understand people's thoughts about moving on from Kevin Stefanski. Here's another reason that you don't. Take a look at his record. Since he's hired as head coach in 2020, the Browns are 26-14 at home, and they're 11-4 at home against the AFC North. Now, they haven't put it together, but those are two of the building blocks to winning the damn division that they haven't won since 1980 whatever when I was covering them day in and day out.
Man, you look at it. That's what you need to do. Those wins. That's why it's See, all of these division wins, they hold more water. There's a reason why in the past, when the Browns teams were getting beat by the Steelers, that usually marked the day that the coach was getting fired. Look at all the coaches who've lost their job after a situation where they lose to the Steelers. But on the flip side, yes, they only have 3 wins, but think about it like this. If those wins were against the Saints, the Jaguars, and I don't know, say the Giants, and they got boat raced by the Steelers and the Ravens so far this year, we're still feeling differently about the entire season.
Yeah.
But since 2 of these wins came against the Ravens and the Steelers, that is more than enough to get your mind and your juices flowing and say, well, maybe hold on here, because the path to where we need to go is winning the division. I've always said the Cleveland Browns need a home game. To get that home game, you better get to win the division, in which they have not done, I believe, since 89.
Yeah, I think it is 89.
So that's the path right there. That's the path to getting a home playoff winning and being competitive. So Kevin Stefanski, I listen, and I know people always talk about you guys are flip-flopping. One week you want to fire, the next week you don't. Listen, this league is week to week. You just beat the Steelers, but if the Browns come out here in the next 3 weeks and look pitiful and bad, the tide's going to turn.
Yep.
But your hope is, with Kevin Stefanski, is the Browns can solidify a floor. And that floor can be, hey, we had a bad year. Things didn't go our way, but we're still going to be competitive these last games. We're going to beat a couple teams where you didn't think we were going to beat them. And hopefully we can scrounge and scrape and get 6 or 7 wins. If you can get that gives you confidence that you have a coach in there that is able to solidify a floor even when everything is breaking loose and going bad. That's the type of a coach that you want, and that's the telltale sign of whether your culture is heading in the right direction.
Well, you've alluded to it. So Jameis Winston, look at his numbers against the Ravens and Steelers. Again, these are the guys you got to beat if you want to win this division eventually. It ain't happening this year. He's 45 of 68, so almost 67% completion percentage. 553 yards, 3 touchdowns, and 1 interception. So again, Winston again, and the Steelers, you can say a lot about Steelers. Their defense is good. The Ravens' pass defense down a little bit, but again, if you can do it against those teams, that's the baseline for winning this division.
I throw it out there. If Baker Mayfield did that against those 2 teams, what would we say? We can win with that.
Yep.
If Deshaun Watson threw for them numbers, we some of us in the fan base would put a trophy up of him. He'd have a statue out front if he could. We talked about that half of football with Deshaun Watson so tough. Right? Think about it. We made that. We squinted real hard. Now, I know these is glasses, but they're prescriptions. I need these to see. We were squinting so tough. Let me see if I can figure out this thing with the... Yep, that was a brilliant game. Won it on the road. And look, we joke about that. But, hey, that was the best we had at that time, and we was going to hang our hat on it. But look at these numbers. These are not... numbers to laugh at. When you take a look at what he's done and throw in the game where he almost throws for 400 yards, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions against the Saints, why are these numbers being diminished to a point where now we're like, well, I guess, but Mike Tomlin kind of he had a couple blunders down the ending part of that game, and Why are we trying to diminish this? Because at the end of the day, we should be evaluating this, because there's no readily available quarterback just running through that room. I mean, we just talked about what the other alternative is. Do you think fans would be like, hey, let me just go ahead and insert Deshaun Watson back as the starter? Do you think people would be excited about that? No, they wouldn't. I think the Cleveland Browns need to really, truly evaluate Jameis Winston the rest of these games to see if they're going to have a quarterback that can be a stopgap quarterback that potentially gives you 2 years, 1 year, 2 year until you figure out what you want to do at quarterback. You'll have more flexibility. Deshaun Watson's numbers will be coming off the books in 2 years. But if you can get good football from Jameis Winston and you can still go in the draft and find guys like probably maybe a Travis Hunter if you're lucky enough to you draft him high, or if you see a dynamic receiver or a left tackle or another defensive end, another rusher that can be dynamic, you by all means go ahead and draft those guys, plug and play, and try to build and bolster around what you got with Jameis Winston, and don't force a quarterback unless you're loving one to death. And by the way, if you're gonna get a Beck and you get Beck out of Georgia because his numbers look kind of bad now, and he slides to the second round, I'm all for it. Give me a second round pick and give me a little quarterback where I could try to work with him and bring him along slowly with Jameis as quarterback.
Yeah, I'm with you. Don't force it. Main thing is do not force it. G. Bush and I are going to step aside, take a quick timeout. As we go to break, news comes from the NFL that the Week 16 game for the Browns-Bengals has been flexed from Thursday to Sunday at 1 o'clock. It'll be on Fox. They are switching the Broncos-Chargers game into that Thursday night game. So Browns-Bengals will be Sunday at 1 o'clock. Sports4CLE, we'll be right back. We'll head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason when we return.
I just picked up all the Ohio Lottery holiday scratch-offs.
They're multiplying.
Yeah, multiplying. With the chance to multiply my prize by 200 times with holiday bonus millions.
No, they're multiplying.
Oh, you're in a daze.
A holidays.
Snap out of it. Because even if we don't win instantly, all the holiday games offer a second chance to win up to 1,000 times the price of the ticket.
Wait, did you say up to 1,000 times?
Sure did.
We continue talking Browns with G. Bush from 92.3 The Fan and the Ultimate Cleveland Sports Show. Let's head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
Hi, Dave. Howard from Marin County. Just wanted to register a couple thoughts. I'm really, really happy that the Browns won, and I believe that the Browns are really a 500 team. So if you subtract out the era of Deshaun Watson, they're now at a 500, 2-2 with Jameis Winston. So I think that Coach Stefanski has sewed up for next year. I think they should keep him. I think they should, keep him long term. I'm not sure about Andrew Berry. You got to have someone new for picking the players in the draft. I do think the acquisition of Jerry Jeudy was a good move. So right now, I think the Browns, with a good quarterback or even an average quarterback, are a 500 team. Great show, and I'm really happy that the Browns have won. Bye.
As always, appreciate all of the voicemails. Bush, I get it. You really have to think about what this roster looks like. Do they get old? And the question becomes, you got to be ahead. How are you not ahead of that? They were behind. You're behind the offensive line injuries. That's a problem. You're behind the age of the offensive line. That's a problem. You tried to switch the offense. That's a problem.
So you go back a couple of years. Remember, there was the running joke was they didn't need defensive linemen, right? You could get guys. Up front that you missed on guys like Malik McDowell, who he had some issues. Perion Winfrey had issues. Siaki Ika's younger guy, Tommy Togiai, some of these guys, linebackers. You did hit on JOK, but again, you've been going with more of veteran guys in the middle, whether it be BJ Goodson or Anthony Walker. Now it's more of a Jordan Hicks situation. You've been trying to find a edge rusher to go with Myles Garrett. You start all the way back to Olivier Vernon, and then you had Emmanuel Ogbah. They thought they had something, and Jadeveon Clowney didn't turn out well, and then you had Zadarius Smith, who you traded away. So there's a lot of different positions where I could say that he has not hit on, and then receiver one has been his Achilles heel. You look at what you did with Anthony Schwartz. You look at with David Bell. Cedric Tillman looks like he might be a viable receiver, but it's a difference between being viable and a home run hitter. It's the difference between being a guy who can just move the chains. We have yet to see an explosive guy where you're like, oh, that's one of those guys, one of Brian Thomas Jr. or Malik Neighbors or any of those guys. So you got to ask yourself, are you comfortable with having Andrew Berry taking these players, given the fact that he took Jed Wills at 10? Listen, not only did you take Jed Wills at 10, Jed Wills would have just been okay being bad on the field, but he compounded the issue by not playing to the whistle, not knowing what his assignments are, and now you're questioning whether or not he really wants to play. So now he's been inactive the last 2 games. That's basically saying we can't play you. You've alienated a lot of people in the organization. But you got to look, Tristan Wirfs coming. He's one of the best tackles and you pick Jed Wills, who's a right tackle, and you projected him to be left. You know, I talked to Joe Thomas. He was on the Ultimate Cleveland Sports Show. Joe Thomas says, listen, Bill Callahan was on him from day one about finishing plays and knowing what he's supposed to do. And they couldn't get it done. And he's still doing some of the same things, standing up, looking around, not knowing. That is a very damning situation for your general manager, because you're saying to yourself, you actually evaluated that guy and you said he was one of the best 10 players in that draft.
Yeah. You can't argue that. There is no argument for that. All right. This is from PFF. Russell Wilson last night. Under pressure, 52% of his dropbacks. Browns only blitzed 3 times all game. So that's an indication and a sign that they got home with the 4 or 5 they were rushing, which that's when you do that, you generally keep the offense from scoring a lot of points.
Can we, and I was on the show earlier today, and I said this, can we stop doing this? You know, Myles Garrett, you know, is probably the best non-quarterback in the league. He's the best defensive player in the league. He's been that multiple times. He's had 10 plus sacks, 7 straight years. Before this game, we would have told you that Myles Garrett is having a bad year and a down year, and maybe we need to shut him down. He has foot problems, and he's been banged up a little bit. But let me just go ahead and show you why the whole Myles Garrett disappearing thing in Cleveland needs to die very quickly. The man showed you the levels to this thing. We like TJ Watt. He's good. He's going to be a Hall of Fame player, nothing taken away from him. But it's not even close in my book. Myles Garrett has been a better player. Myles Garrett might go down as the best defensive end and skill set to ever play the game of football. And the fact that every single time that we turn on the TV and we don't see a sack or anything in the column for Myles Garrett, it is not time to start talking about why he disappears and how he's overrated. You know, well, I don't know how PFF has him rated that high. Well, maybe because they're watching the tape and they're rewinding it back, and we just looking at the stats in the score sheet. As a former defensive end, there's lots of things you can do on the football field that applies to winning football. That stat you just gave applies to it. Just because Myles Garrett got 3 sacks, it doesn't mean that he was not more impactful on other plays. When you got hands up, when you're in the backfield, the almost sacks, the fact that you have to allocate resources to block him. You got to keep a running back in to block him. You got to keep a tight end in to block him. Don't you want those guys out in route patterns? I would love to have my running back and tight end out. But guess what? When you're doing those type of things and you have to slide to protection and the tackles over there, that's the less amount of people that you can put out to get yards and to throw the football. So Myles Garrett affects the game more than what the eye can see. It's all in the details. It's all in the tape. And Myles Garrett just shows you when he plays like this that there's nothing you can do with him. We should learn to stop questioning his ability every single time we turn over the page and we're like, oh, he didn't have 3 sacks today. He must have not did anything.
Yeah, and the other thing is, whatever the Brown, where was that from the offensive line? Because T.J. Watt was a non-factor. How did you do that, and why did it take you until week 12 to be able to do that on the offensive line? Yeah,
right?
yes, because he was a T.J. Watt was a non-entity.
Nothing. I think they did a good job of pointing it out on the broadcast, and they ran the ball a little better than I thought they would have, given the circumstances with the field and the weather. So kudos to the offensive line. We've been tough on them. I thought they played one of their best games this year.
G. Bush, as always, great stuff. Appreciate the time and the insight. Thanks very much.
Appreciate you.
G. Bush, make sure you check him out. 92.3 The Fans, The Barbershop, 8 until noon on Saturdays. Ultimate Cleveland Sports Show, Monday through Friday from 11 to 1. We're going to step aside, take a quick time out. Jacob Roach from the Orange and Brown Report straight ahead. We continue talking Browns on Sports4CLE.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
We continue talking Browns on Sports4CLE. Let's head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
Hey guys, so here we go again. Now you guys will get all excited and say, okay, we'll keep Stefanski, we're on the right track, we're this, we're that. All you did was win one game, okay? So we got up and played Pittsburgh, who's the thing, and won the game. Then you're going to turn around and lose the next one to Denver, you'll get crushed. There's no consistency to this, but we'll say Stefanski's our guy, and Winston's our guy, and we should do this, and we'll be all right. And yet deep down inside, guys, we got no consistency to the team. Okay, so we get up and win one game. Myles Garrett has a good game. Then the next game he disappears again. We have no consistency, and with that, we'll never win anything with that. So we're 3-8. Yippee. All we did was lose our draft status. But everybody else will think we're on the right track now because we won a game. I don't think so. Take care, guys.
As always, appreciate all the voicemails. Let's welcome in Jacob Roach, Orange and Brown Report, the Barking Browns podcast. To be fair, that caller's been pretty consistent. He doesn't like Kevin Stefanski. So I get where he's coming from. I get the consistency thing. I'm not of the opinion you worry about your draft status. You worry about trying to figure out how to win football games. And I preface that by saying there's no Joe Burrow in this draft. If there was a can't-miss slam dunk quarterback, I'd be for trotting out, Bailey Zappi for the next games, but there isn't.
Yeah, and this is a draft that isn't particularly star-studded at the top at any position, really. I actually think if you're in like the 15 to 20 range in the first round, you're actually in kind of the sweet spot. So when you talk about hurt and draft position and things like that, but one thing that really did move me about last night, we've talked about it in previous weeks. I've been very vocal against maybe Stefanski's not the guy, and things aren't going the way I thought they would. Every Browns coach prior to Stefanski, in my lifetime anyway, would have rolled over and died last night. They would not have rebounded from an embarrassing loss to the Saints and gotten up and ready to play against a division rival. That's a good Steelers team that have ended many of Browns head coaches' tenures, and he got his guys to rally. Myles was dominant. People love playing with Jameis Winston. They were fun. I enjoyed watching them. It's just not something I've seen from previous regimes. And now you say you got 6 more games. So he's right. You did just win one game. You need to go stack some wins, make some more impressive, do some more impressive things than what you did last night. But I think it's significant because it speaks to how things have been different with Stefanski and Barry compared to what else we have seen since 1999. Yeah,
and again, I don't discount people of the opinion it's time to move on. I disagree with it, but I certainly understand how people that think it's time to move on from this regime have arrived there. This season has been that big of a disappointment. I'm not sure I would do that just yet. This is interesting as well. Per Next Gen Stats, TJ Watt, only 1 pressure and 28 rushes, was double-teamed only 3 times. Myles Garrett had 8 pressures, 3 sacks. Garrett double-teamed significantly more than 3 times. So Myles Garrett was motivated. We heard from it earlier in the show. He was motivated going against TJ Watt. What was impressive, and my question is, where's that been, is the offensive line kept TJ Watt from wrecking the game. The offensive line, now if Eddie had a couple of slip-ups, the offensive line played better than they have. Still not great, but better than they have.
I feel like Jack Conklin has quietly had a really good season at right tackle. Like, he's definitely been their most consistent offensive lineman through this point, and which is kind of been the story of Jack Conklin's career in Cleveland. At least when he's on the field, he's been a heck of a football player, but he's just missed so much time. And it's kind of coming together where now the interior's been healthy for an extended period of time. Conklin's been healthy. Yeah, you've got kind of still had a revolving door on the left side. And like you said, Ifedi, he was a right tackle playing left tackle. He had his moments last night. I thought he wasn't a total liability, but the ups and downs. This offensive line kind of looks like a group that's kind of feeling their groove, getting into the groove of things and kind of being like, okay, yeah, we've now had some consistency, at least with the interior and on the right side. And I think the way Jameis gets the ball out of his hands quickly and the way they were able to chip and do some things on the right side really helped Conklin. But if that's the Jack Conklin you're getting and he stays healthy moving into 2025, you have less needs in the draft and free agency, because that was a really nice performance from him and the rest of that line last night.
All right, so we'll get a little deeper into the TJ Watt, Myles Garrett thing. TJ Watt last year upset when Myles Garrett was named Defensive Player of the Year, felt that he deserved it, being TJ Watt. Garrett disagreed, and last night he played like he was trying to prove something.
Myles, did you get the apology from TJ that you were hoping for?
I didn't see him afterwards, but take nothing away from, no disrespect from my comments. He's absolute dog, hell of a player, and I'm just staying in my lane. But I'm trying to be the guy, and I think I'm showing that day in and day out. I mean, I wouldn't really look at like what he did. I was really just focused on going out there and playing the very best ball I could. But yeah, I wanted to make it known that I'm the guy. I'm number one, edge defender, and that was a statement I was intending to make, and I think I made.
Yeah, that was an impressive performance against. I mean, the offensive line of the Steelers is improving. Still not great, but it isn't a terrible offensive line either. And he wrecked their game plan.
Yeah, and a lot has been made about Russell Wilson doing the checkdowns and the moon balls, and one thing that happens if he wants to be successful going vertically is he's got to have enough time to throw, and he hit some shots down the field, absolutely, but when Myles hit him a few more times, and I know he got hit by a couple of other players too, where it's like you could tell there was a little bit of hesitancy as that game went on for Russell Wilson and even Justin Fields to want to stand into the pocket, knowing what Myles Garrett was doing. I thought it was very. I found it very interesting the way Myles made that statement, like, I'm him, I'm the number one, I'm that guy, because I don't know that he's directly said it that, just that explicitly, where like just really saying, hey, straight up, I'm the number one guy. But like when you get 3 sacks in any kind of game, let alone a half or whatever, and he's done that twice now this year, 7 straight years with double-digit sacks. He is absolutely a generational player, and you just kind of hope that the Browns, especially in 2025, maybe can make a deep run with him, because he is an absolute game wrecker.
All right, so this is kind of interesting. It shows you how, the Browns played far from perfect. So these are junk stat combinations, and that's probably pretty accurate. So the Browns lost the turnover battle by 2. They've had that problem all year. Failed to convert even 2 third downs all game. They were 1 of 10. They didn't score a return touchdown. They were outgained as well for the game. With those combination of facts, teams were 0-67 over the last 30 years before the Browns had all those things go and found a way to win. And again, they played far from perfect. The weather, I don't know. But the thing is, and you alluded to it, they were out to win, and they found a way to win.
I love obscure stats, by the way, so I'm really happy that Barnwell put that together, because I just think those just really made me laugh just reading all of that combination together. This felt like the 23 Browns, where a lot of things just did not make sense necessarily, and they didn't go their way, and yet they found a way to rally around each other, rally around their quarterback, and rally around Nick Chubb. I think that was an awesome moment to see Nick get the first touchdown and then the game-winning touchdown as well. But they just seem to be out, like, they rallied, they found a way to win, found a way to get it done in the moments that mattered. I thought Jerry Jeudy was fantastic in this game. A big catch from Blake Whiteheart. Jordan Akins had the drop, but some big catches, a big 2-point conversion catch from David Njoku. Everybody stepped up when their number was called upon last night, and that's how you get an improbable win, and that's how you build some momentum in a season that's kind of lost playoff-wise, but, you're trying to build something for next year and into the future, and that's kind of how you got to do those things sometimes. You got to do it ugly.
Jacob Roach from the Orange and Brown Report, the Barking Browns podcast, and I'm going to step aside, take a quick time out. Other side of the break, we'll hear from Juan Thornhill. Sports4CLE, be right back. Stay with us.
I just picked up all the Ohio Lottery holiday scratch-offs.
They're multiplying.
Yeah, multiplying. With the chance to multiply my prize by 200 times with holiday bonus millions.
No, they're multiplying.
Oh, you're in a daze.
A holidays.
Snap out of it. Because even if we don't win instantly, all the holiday games offer a second chance to win up to 1,000 times the price of the ticket.
Wait, did you say up to 1,000 times?
Sure did.
We continue talking Browns with Jacob Roach from the Orange and Brown Report, as well as the Barking Browns podcast. We've talked about Juan Thornhill pretty much all week. Has not been a great signing. Has not. He's been banged up and hasn't played well when he's been on the field. He was called out for lack of effort in a couple of the plays on the Saints game. He played well against the Steelers. He was asked about that last night.
Explosive play that I saw you sprinting, and I also saw your Instagram story. Is this that extra effort? Is that what we were seeing out there?
I mean, that play is not, it's not me. I'm just going to be completely honest. Like, I played with MVS out in Kansas City. Guy caught the ball, and I'm just like, this guy runs a 4.340. I'm not catching him. Got a little lazy, and I'll own up to it. But that's just not me, and that'll never happen again. That's why when he broke out today, I was determined I was going to catch him and I was going to run a dude down. Because I've done it multiple times, but just that one time, people pointed it out, and I just can't have that. Because there's past plays when, like, Derrick Henry broke and I run him down. Like, you see it all the time. But I guess people just chose to pick out that one play. But, it's part of the game.
Jacob, I thought Thornhill played pretty well last night. I noticed him run support a couple of times. There wasn't anything that was glaring, so that was one of his better games. He stood out a little bit, I guess.
Yeah, and I respect, him kind of stepping up and saying, yeah, you're right. That was kind of lazy. I did not give you my full effort, but I'm going to make sure that never happens again. Like, yeah, he's right. You're going to have bad plays. You're going to make mistakes where you don't do what you should probably do on the field, but, trying to act like it didn't happen, which is what a lot of guys will do. It does you no good. But in this moment, he's like, hey, that's me. I'm sorry. I owned it. I'm going to be better. And I did. I agree with you, Dave. Like, he came up, and I know it was a first down, but he had a hit on, I think it was Jaylen Warren on that first drive where he came up and just kind of lowered his shoulder and hit him square, put him down on the ground, stopped it from, being another big play. And just right off the gate, it felt like he was really playing as hard as he absolutely could and was trying to, be a man of his words and back up him saying, I was lazy. I shouldn't have done that. I'll be better than that. And, a lot of guys, I don't know, they would have taken it the way he took it. And so, yeah, it's been a rough couple of years for him in town. But last night I got a lot of respect for him in the way he kind of owned that mistake and owned that play.
So the other thing that happened in the last play of the game was, it was a Hail Mary, and George Pickens and Greg Newsome were going at it. And there's a couple of things here. in the end zone and then out of the end zone, and we'll get a couple of looks at this. So there's Pickens kind of wrapped his arm around Greg Newsome's head, and they just keep going out of the end zone and kind of pushing back and forth at each other, and eventually had to be restrained. So George Pickens talked after the game about the loss to the Browns.
What do you guys try to take away from this loss? What's the message, in the locker room?
Just keep grinding. Like I said, conditions played a huge part in today's game. I don't really think the Cleveland Browns are a good team at all. I think the conditions kind of saved them today.
Well, there's Greg Newsome's response via X, Twitter, or whatever you want to call it. He's referring to Pickens as a fake tough guy. It's hard to argue when you're 2-8 that you're a good football team. If you can't win here's the thing, you play in Pittsburgh. If you can't win in weather, you're going to struggle come November, December in the playoffs, George.
When you're playing in, Pittsburgh.
Exactly.
Or wherever you might
exactly. Exactly my point. It's not like you're coming in from Miami. You're in Pittsburgh.
Yeah, it's like, yeah, you don't know how to play in snow? My bad. I thought this was a football weather kind of game that we were trying to go out there and have. That's the thing about George Pickens, man. Like, absolute talent, but just the attitude and kind of the off the field and like, you weren't in any position. You were the best pass catcher, probably the best offensive player on that team. Period. At least when it comes to talent. And you were in no way, shape, or form in a position to even try to make a play. Like, at least work back towards the ball and like try to fight through it and be like, oh, Newsome interfered. No, you had a hold of his head and you just dragged him out. Security had to break it up. Denzel Ward was trying to get in there and get it broken up. And it's just like, this is why the dude kind of fell. And this is why, even as talented as he is, he's kind of rubbed a lot of people in Pittsburgh the wrong way from what I can understand. And it's just, give them bulletin board. The last time someone said something about the Browns is the Browns, it really worked out for Pittsburgh. So I don't know, man. Sometimes it's just, you get some people that don't take losing very well.
Well, that's fine. But again, it had a lot more to do with what you guys didn't do than the weather. Yeah. So that's fine. This is interesting as well. So since week 8, keep in mind the Browns did have a bye. Jameis Winston has the 11th highest PFF grade at quarterback, second best in total passing yards, and is 5th in first downs. Watson was 26th highest PFF grade, 30th in passing yards, and 24th in first downs. Again, you can point to a lot of things. It's the quarterback play that was the problem. And again, you're not going to move on from Deshaun Watson, but you better not give him the job because, quite frankly, he hasn't done anything to deserve it.
We've heard a lot of buzz finally this week. We've talked about Watson never playing again for the team, but a lot of that is just, other media members and content creators without really getting any inside source that has confirmed that, just us and, reading the tea leaves. But, I think it was Albert Breer. It may have been one of the pregame shows. I'm trying to remember, talked about the Browns are looking, to bring in competition for Deshaun Watson. They're not going to hand him the job in 2025. And I think that's kind of the first time we've got that type of report about that. And I think it's significant that it was then followed up with Jameis Winston just having fun in the snow and beating a very good football team and a good defense when you could barely see where the ball was being thrown to. And Jerry Jeudy and other guys just kept plucking the ball out of the air. It's just, we have seen Kevin Stefanski's offense work when he has a competent quarterback. Like, even PJ Walker was able to do some things because he took some chances and was willing to give his guys the opportunity to make plays and hit the guys that Stefanski schemes open and allow them to make plays after the catch. It's what Jameis is doing. I think you've seen it. You got 6 more games to prove it, but 4 games through, you're seeing Deshaun Watson is not an NFL quarterback anymore. And the problem is not Kevin Stefanski. Yes, there's other problems. You need to fix some offensive line issues, the communication issues on defense. There's some things that need to be cleaned up and some talent and that needs to be added in certain positions. But there it is, man. The reason they started as poor as they started definitively was Deshaun Watson, and we've seen all we need to see to prove that.
All right, so quarterback news happening around the league as well, and this was kind of alluded to when Daniel Jones said goodbye to New York. Today he was given notice that they're going to release him, so Jones will be a free agent. Again, I don't know. He's a guy that's won some games in the NFL, so you want to bring him in and have him compete, that's fine. He's not going to get a guaranteed deal. He's not going to get a lot of money. He's going to be looking for a place where he can go and try to reclaim his career. You bring in as many of those guys as you can, and you hope you find one that can play quarterback and win games.
Andrew Berry loves those first-round reclamation project guys and trying to bring a guy in that was drafted where he was drafted because he has talent and things just haven't worked out with him. Daniel Jones is, I think that some of the New York stuff and being there and the pressure that comes with being a New York quarterback, I think maybe was too much for him a little bit at times. But this is a dude that can attack you with his legs and attack you with his arm. And I wouldn't bring him in. I don't really want to go down that route, but I would not be shocked if the Browns did that because, Kevin Stefanski runs a scheme that is very quarterback friendly. And I think Daniel Jones' skill set would work in Kevin Stefanski's offense. Personally, I would just give Jameis Winston some money and bring him back and make sure. But I'm with you 100%. When you are trying to find a quarterback, you want to take as many dart throws at the board as you can. And Jones would be that guy. And if he's willing to take, kind of a Bailey Zappi-like contract, and you want to bring him around for the rest of this year and just watch him in practice and or even on the practice squad. Yeah, I now that I'm thinking about him being on the practice squad, I like that idea a lot down the stretch. Get 6 weeks and maybe see if there's anything that you could, salvage.
All right. This is interesting as well. Kind of goes with what we were talking about relative to Jameis Winston. Jerry Jeudy over his last 4 games, 24 catches, 379 yards, and a touchdown. I'm not going to sit here and tell you I think he's a number 1 wide receiver, but I think he's a competent wide receiver that can threaten a defense, and the Browns need more of those guys.
He's definitely turning into the player that Andrew Berry paid. Not quite all the way there yet. You want to see it for a bigger stretch than a month, but in big moments yesterday, that throw on that final drive, the final touchdown drive for the Browns, where Jameis has to put it up. He's got to get it over the defenders. There's 2 guys there. It's snow, it's bad weather, bad footing, but Jeudy manages to go climb the ladder, high point the ball, come down, get the first down. And then he gets the opportunity on that 3rd down. I still don't think he was touched on the way down. He probably could have got up and ran it in for a touchdown there on that final drive. But, he understood where the holes in the zone and where to attack the Steelers defense. And he just rose to the occasion on multiple times over the last couple of weeks. And he just looks like a fast he looks like a former 1st-round wide receiver is what he looks like. And if you can build off of that and you go into this offseason knowing that you're just looking for a compliment and not a alpha number 1 wide receiver, man, just like with Jack Conklin, that you start ticking some of these things off the to add list in the offseason, and you're feeling better about the outlooks of 2025.
Jacob Roach, as always, appreciate the time and the insight. Thanks very much, Jacob.
Thanks, guys.
Jacob Roach, make sure you check him out. Orange and Brown Report. He also is the co-host of the Barking Browns podcast. We're going to step aside, take a quick time out. We turn our attention to the Cavaliers, off to a great start. Cavs beat reporter Chris Fedor straight ahead on Sports4CLE. Stay with us. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program is dedicated to recognizing exceptional students, teachers, and schools throughout Ohio. Scan the QR code on screen to nominate students and teachers as Academic All-Stars and Teachers of the Month. They must be currently enrolled or teach in grades K through 12. Is your K through 12 school developing students' literacy skills to achieve success in reading? If so, you can nominate your school for the School of the Year. Students can win $100, teachers can win $500, and schools can win $2,500. Scan the QR code, fill out the forms, and nominate deserving students, teachers, and schools today. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program takes pride in honoring exceptional students, teachers, and schools across Ohio. Submit your nomination today. It's fun, fast, and free. We turn our attention to the Cavaliers. Couple of days off, and then they'll get back at it. 16-1 on the season, a great start. Let's head to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
Yeah, Truth or Reason. What do the Cavs think of Cam Johnson? Do you think they would trade for Cam at the trade deadline? They need a big forward. If they're going to deal with Boston, they need a big forward. Yeah, Truth or Reason. What do the Cavs think of Cam?
As always, appreciate all of the voicemails. Let's welcome in Chris Fedor, Cavs beat reporter, plain dealer at cleveland.com. The way they're playing, why would you mess with what you have going?
Well, to answer the question, Dave, the Cavs love Cam Johnson, and they've loved Cam Johnson for years. When he came into the NBA draft in 2019, the Cavs had 2 first-round picks at that point in time. They ended up with 3. But they were targeting Cam Johnson. They brought him in for a workout. They were hoping that he was going to be there late in the first round, and then he vaulted all the way into the lottery, way out of their draft range. So every time that any kind of conversation has come up about the potential availability of Cam Johnson from the Brooklyn Nets or the Phoenix Suns before that, the Cavs were involved and are going to be involved because he would fit really, really well. He spaces the floor. He knocks down threes. He's a low maintenance player. He's a low touch type player. But there are complications when it comes to this, obviously. The Cavs have used a lot of their trade assets already in the past to bring in Donovan Mitchell and Jarrett Allen. And they just don't have a lot of quote unquote expendable pieces that would be attractive to a team like the Brooklyn Nets. And if Brooklyn is going to move on from Cam Johnson, and I'm not saying that they're going to, because he was one of the centerpieces of the Kevin Durant trade with the Phoenix Suns. But if they're going to move on from him, there is going to be a bidding war. There are going to be a number of teams that are lining up to try and get this kind of player because he does fit well in a potential 7-game series against the likes of the Knicks, the Bucks, the 76ers, the Boston Celtics, all of those kinds of teams because of the skill set that he brings to the table. And I just feel like, given all the things that the Cavs have already given up in the past to make the blockbuster deal specifically for Donovan Mitchell, that if Cam Johnson becomes available, the Cavs aren't going to win that bidding war because they're just not going to have enough attractive pieces to beat out some of these other teams that are going to have the same willingness to deal with that caliber player. And to your point, Dave, this is a really good team. This is a championship level team. I think everything that we've seen from this team in the first 17 games points to that. And I just don't think they're in the kind of position where they're looking at a potential drastic shakeup at the trade deadline, unless something unforeseen happens with this roster with a significant injury or something along those lines. But they do love Cam Johnson, and they have been involved in Cam Johnson trade talks in the past.
Yeah, and you know, to your point, that they're trying to find minutes for guys. You know, it's always a good problem to have too many players as opposed to not having enough. I know you wrote an article after the Celtics loss a couple games ago. Kind of the Cavs' belief, even though they came out on the short end of that. Take us through that article and kind of what you found with that.
It was just a different vibe in that locker room. You know, the Cavs were encouraged with the way that they were able to play on the road, NBA Cup game, given the grueling schedule that they've been dealing with, the fact that they were basically out of playable wings by the time that game rolled around. No Max Strus, no Dean Wade, no Isaac Okoro, no Karis LeVert, and they only lost by 3 points. So they felt really, really good about their performance. And they felt like some of the things that went wrong in that game, specifically in the first half, they weren't Boston Celtics related. They weren't matchup related to the Celtics. It's that the Cavs, they did some poor things in terms of execution. And it wasn't because of what the Celtics did to them. They felt those were self-inflicted errors. Now you can sit there and you can say that that's a naive way to look at it, that the Celtics certainly played a part in Darius Garland going 3 of 21 from the field, all those different things. But the Cavs have believed from the very beginning coming into this season that they belong in the conversation with the elite teams in the NBA. And when you play like that on the road against that caliber opponent in what is considered your first big test of the season, there was a positive feeling coming off of that game. In fact, there were multiple players in the locker room, Dave, saying that if we see them in the playoffs, we can beat that team. And that just wasn't the feeling coming off of last year's playoff loss against Boston. When it was game 5 and they had just lost in the Eastern Conference semifinals, they were basically calling out that changes needed to be made within the organization in some capacity. They weren't specifically saying that we need to go change the coach, but they were saying that we've got too much talent on this team to not be competitive with the Boston Celtics. And I think the belief that the Cavs have in Kenny Atkinson continues to show, and the belief that they have in themselves continues to show. And they believe that if they were to see the Celtics in a playoff environment, that they can be much more competitive than they were last year and maybe even beat the Celtics.
Yeah, and you know, to your point, just to finish off the thought with the Celtics shot over 50% from three-point range, and they found a way to get back in the game and lost by 3. So, yeah, absolutely. The other thing that happened next game against the Pelicans, first NBA career start for Jalen Tyson. Became the first rookie to tally 16 points, 11 rebounds, 7 assists, 2 steals in a single game in his first rookie, since Brad Daugherty, who was the #1 overall pick back in '87. 20 points, 11 rebounds, 7 assists, 2 steals against Boston. Kenny Atkinson kind of on the thought process of getting Jalen Tyson into the starting lineup against the Pelicans.
I'll give our assistant coaches credit. They really pushed to put him in the starting lineup. And I was fighting it. I said, wait a second, he hasn't really played at all. I'm not, I was a little pretty unsure, and they pushed and pushed. I was in the elevator with DeMar Carroll, and he goes, hey, we got to start Jalen because it's important for a young guy to be around vets to start. And I thought that was great. That's why you have a staff. It's a great suggestion that really helped him get off to a good start.
Chris, the other thing, it's kind of he listens, that Kenny Atkinson, but guys are ready when they, Ty Jerome, everybody seems to be prepared when they are given the opportunity.
It's a big deal, Dave. They have so many playable guys in this potential rotation. And that's what you're going to need throughout the course of an 82-game grind. That's what you're going to need if you have this big picture plan to try and get Donovan Mitchell through this 82-game grind in a better mental and physical state than what he was last year. Same thing with Jared Allen, same thing with Evan Mobley. So Kenny Atkinson, the minute that he took over as head coach for JB Bickerstaff, he said, we're going to celebrate depth. We're going to play 10, 11 guys. And we have probably 13 or 14 that could be playing in the NBA. So when you don't have Sam Merrill, you don't have Isaac Okoro, Dean Wade, Max Strus, all those guys are missing all at the same time. Jalen Tyson is not them. Jalen Tyson has a different skill set. He's not as talented as them. But you feel like you have a playable guy where you're not going to lose so much drastically by going to him in the starting lineup or giving him 25 to 30 minutes or something along those lines. And it gives Kenny Atkinson the kind of freedom to navigate this schedule the way that ultimately he wants to. It gives Jalen Tyson an opportunity to get minutes in a situation where otherwise he wouldn't, because he's just caught up in a numbers game. But all these guys, whether it's Craig Porter Jr., whether it's Ty Jerome, whether it's Jalen Tyson, whether it might be Luke Travers down the road, it's just a situation where when you get these opportunities, you're going to have to capitalize. You're going to have to prove that you're ready for them. And that's not an easy role for an NBA player. It's not easy to sit there and say, well, you're not going to play for 14 straight games, but here you go. Here's your opportunity. Make the most of it. But if you have guys that are capable of doing that, and Jalen Tyson stepped up and did that, and Craig Porter has stepped up and done that, going from DNPs to, consistent rotational minutes, given the injuries that the Cavs are dealing with at this moment, that's really, really important for the success of your team, especially in the regular season. So you have to give Jalen Tyson, a rookie, a lot of credit for being able to capitalize on that opportunity, being able to stay ready behind the scenes, and being able to be effective in this kind of role. Same thing when it comes to Craig Porter Jr., because like I said, it's just not easy for these guys.
All right, so this from the Bleacher Report. Winners and losers from the NBA's first month. Winner, Cavs. Its top 2 offense is not a fluke. Garland is making all NBA leap. Mobley is broadening his offensive horizons. Donovan Mitchell effectively reading the room on a possession-by-possession basis. Roster is deep and going to get deeper. Again, you're with the team day in and day out. You're at all the practices. What stands out to you about the Cavs in this 16-1 record, the 16-1 start they're off to?
To me, Dave, it's belief and it's buy-in when it comes to this particular system. And sometimes that means that Donovan Mitchell has to take a step back, and that means empowering Darius Garland or Evan Mobley and giving them more of an opportunity. But there's a belief and there's a collective buy-in because they think it's their best path forward. So the style that they're playing offensively, there is validation that it works. It's one thing to talk about it throughout the course of training camp and in the preseason and say, we're going to do this. We're going to shoot more threes. We're going to play a faster pace. We're going to share the basketball. We're going to be selfless. We're going to move without the basketball. But then to do it in the first month of the season and see the success that it can have for you in the first month of the season, it's validating. And I don't think anybody saw the Cavs having the #1 offense in the NBA. But when you see a style work to that level against these caliber opponents, you can't help but buy in. You can't help but say, we're going to continue to do this for 82 games. We're going to continue to do this because it's our best path to consistent success at that end of the floor. So that to me is what stands out. There's just a level of belief in Kenny Atkinson and this coaching staff that they're going to find solutions, that they're going to make the right adjustments, that they're going to make the right lineup decisions, that they're going to put each player in the best position for them to not only have individual success, but have that individual success translate to team success. And there's also a joy that they're playing with. Part of that is Darius Garland finding his joy again and playing at a high level, but you see it. There's a little bit of a Golden State influence, not just in terms of play style, but in terms of fun, in terms of excitement, in terms of the joy that the Cavs are playing with. And that really is infectious.
Chris Fedor, Cavs beat reporter for the Plain Dealer, cleveland.com. As always, great stuff. Appreciate the time and the insight. Thanks very much, Chris.
You got it, Dave. Anytime.
Chris Fedor, make sure you check him out. Great Cavs coverage in the pages of the Plain Dealer as well as cleveland.com. It's going to do it for this edition of Sports for CLE. We'll see you back here Monday at 4 o'clock. Have a great night, everybody. See you Monday at 4 on Sports for CLE.